Jazz Club.
Hey everyone, good evening. Welcome to the third episode of The Death of Cliff Huxtable. My name is Terésa Dowell-Vest, and I'm excited to bring you a chapter that was probably the most requested chapter when putting the book together, the Denise chapter. Before we get into the throes of tonight's chapter, I just want to take a moment to continue to amplify the voices of those who are protesting, who are out on the streets, peacefully protesting in the name of justice, to eradicate injustice everywhere it exists. Before we started our call tonight, it's been on the news across all platforms, it seems, that Trump has decided to threaten with the promise of bringing in military force against American citizens. And when I think about the bravado that he's using to make those demands, my blood just completely boils, and it inspires one to go out and to be even more demonstrative in the name of righteousness and just. Tonight, we're talking about the emotional violence of shaming. There's a physical violence, a spiritual violence, as well as an emotional violence to making people feel as though their voice or their presence in the world is unworthy or somehow needs to conform to make others comfortable. I'm trying to maintain an ease right now because we are still going to portray an element of entertainment tonight. I am angry. And we will do tonight a speakable voice. We will not be shamed. We will not be closeted. We will not be moved. We will speak and demonstrate and show up exactly how we choose to show up. So that person who's perpetrating the fraud of leadership in the name of the president of the United States, he does not speak for us. He does not represent us. Those watching both domestically and abroad, that man does not speak on my behalf. I am thoroughly embarrassed by the leadership that we have. And the shame is not the people. The shame is that administration. And I will leave it there. I will leave it there. Okay. Because we're going to talk about all this. We're going to talk about all this tonight. We have an amazing panel. We have an amazing cast. And this is America. This that we're going to participate in is who we are and what we do at our best. So that said, tonight we will read chapter 2 entitled Denise. Vanessa, Denise, and Sondra linger by the gravesite as the crowd moves towards the cars. They do not speak as two men on the gravesite begin to move towards the grave and place flowers into the open hole with the lowered casket. In the distance, they hear the sound of car doors opening and closing, ignition switch being turned. The sun is setting over Brooklyn on this early fall evening. There's a slight crisp in the air, so the sound of cars warming brings Sondra out of her quiet.
I think we should go on to the house. The cars are waiting.
You go ahead. I'll get home in a little bit. Take Olivia with you if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Just don't be too long.
Are you sure, Denise?
I mean, I could stay with you if you'd like.
No, it's okay, Vanessa.
Are you sure, Denise? I mean, you don't have a car.
Vanessa, I'm sure. This wouldn't be the first time I figured out my way back home on my own. It's okay. I'll be fine. Go. Please, would you mind giving me a moment?
Sure, no problem.
To hitch a ride on the wings of a sparrow. Wouldn't that be nice? To go where the wind takes you and be free to let the open sky guide you nowhere. You never got that about me. You never... You were my guy. Do you know that? Did you know that? You were the model for them all. You were the measuring stick for all of them. You were my guy. And I think I was supposed to find him so that I could find you. So I could love you. So I could feel close to you. I did that. That's what I wanted. I would find the man and you would be happy. You would be happy for me. And I wanted to make you happy because you were my guy. I felt like a series of disappointments to you. And I go away hoping that when I came back, we could, I don't know. There are two men nearby, leaning on someone's mother's grave or someone's father's tomb. Can you see them, Dad? They light cigarettes and talk about the Giants or the Jets or which team has a stronger secondary or which team needs a new quarterback or which. Do you hear those guys, Dad? They're talking football. And I can't tell if they're Giants guys or Jets guys. Not that it matters much to me, but this moment is just a simple wait and let's talk about football moment for them. It's nothing too deep. Nothing too special. Just wait and feel the moment. The emptiness type of moment. This isn't heartbreaking for everyone. Fathers love their daughters. Fathers do love their daughters, and I know you loved us all. I know you did, and I loved you. But we stopped liking each other a long time ago. I missed my guy, you know? I missed the man who thought I was charming and lovely and sweet. I became a woman that challenged your idea of a lady, and you loved me. But you didn't like me. You didn't like who I became. You didn't like the cut-up shirts or my spiked hair or my style in high school. You didn't like the college dropout or the wife of the divorced father or my locks. You didn't like that. I didn't like you picking me apart. I didn't like it. And I think you knew that. And I used to think that you enjoyed shaming my every picked apart piece. Did you? Was I your shame? My piles of disappointment left you questioning, like, what is wrong with this one? Why can't she be like her sisters with the good grades or the good husband or the kids of her own or the steady job? And I knew that. I knew it. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yes. Can I get one of those?
You want a cigarette?
You have something else you want to offer me?
Y'all, I gave the lady a cigarette. I see her, she fine. She slipped it between her lips. I pulled out my lighter. A warm hand. Oh.
Hey, say hey man. We not today. We are not doing that right now.
It's okay. I'm okay.
But it's your father's funeral. It's
okay.
That lady said it's okay.
Okay, I know you doing your Denise shoot your shot moment. I mean, who wouldn't? But okay, fine. Okay. Well, Denise places her soft, warm hands around
Butch.
Okay, Butch. Denise places her soft, warm hands around Butch's soft hands.
Surprisingly soft.
Denise places her soft, warm hands around Butch's surprisingly soft hands to shield the flame. Denise brings his hand and flame closer to her lips to light her cigarette. And with a quick few drags, Denise is lit and is satisfied.
Thank you, Butch.
No problem.
Denise.
Cool. I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. And thanks for the cigarette again. I appreciate it very much.
Okay, well, the young gravedigger Butch is on his way, going about your way, and he backs his way towards the headstone and takes a seat with his buddy. Denise continues to talk to her father.
There were times that I challenged you for sport. It gave me a slight rise to Fluxter, the great Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable. But that's all it was. Just folly for my amusement. I loved you. But I don't think I liked you much either. I'd say that I'm jealous of those birds flying off. But I've always been one of them. Flying off to seek a better branch, flock to embrace me, feather of my kind who would never judge me as I am, who would never hold me to the standard of Sondra or Butch is handsome. Oh my God, you would die if I brought home a gravedigger. Oh. That was so poorly timed. But I suspect you would have found a speck of humor in my ill-timed joke. But That's what we do, right? We joke, we kid, and we tease, we ridicule, and we shame, and we act as if it's part of some act, right? The Huxtable Family Hour, starring the most perfect dad you will ever know, with the most perfect wife and her gang of imperfect kids. I kept finding my way back to you, and I kept needing to leave. This life suffocated me. This perfect Huxtable life was not living, and I know I've lived, and my life I'm living, that's the version of the life that I want to live, not yours.
Denise looks up from the gravesite beneath the quickly setting sun. She takes a final drag off her cigarette and tosses it into the mound of dirt to be placed on her father's grave, and mashes it into the soil beneath her boot. She nods to the two men to signal that she is done and is about to leave. Butch flashes Denise a modest smile, as not to disrespect her in her time of need, but to reflect his interest in her. Denise acknowledges his smile with a soft smirk in return, and she waits for him to meet her at the open grave. He hurries over, excited to be summoned by the beautiful, beautiful woman with the long locks running down her back. She reaches into her hand purse and pulls out a pewter frame with a black and white photo of herself from 1987. She hands the framed photo to the young man.
Put this in there, please.
Are you sure? It's a pretty great photo.
I am sure. It was one of his favorites.
She raises her head to listen to the singing sparrows and the flutter of their collective wings as they continue on their journey in the purple and orange New York sky. And with a chilled, quiet whisper,
this is not heartbreaking for everyone.
Denise walks away from the open grave, leaving behind a pile of dirt and a photo. I'd like to introduce to you our panelist who will be joining us. Ashlee B. Daniels is a colleague of mine in the Department of Languages and Communication at Prairie View A&M University. She is also a doctoral student in the Educational Leadership Program at the university, along with myself. So we spend a lot of time together, and I just adore this brilliant woman. Her area of research is looking at how to best accommodate Black women in higher education. She's also doing double duty as a panelist, as well as portraying the role of Rudy, which you will see her do her work on Thursday. We also have Grady Paris Johnson, G. Paris Johnson. Grady, also a colleague of ours in the same Department of Languages and Communication. She is a wife, a mommy, a professor. She's an activist. She's a Black feminist. She writes for a number of websites and online magazines, and she teaches English at Prairie View. And she also is doing double duty, as she will be portraying the role of Olivia in later episodes. We also have Dr. Stella Smith. Dr. Smith is the Associate Director for the Minority Achievement, Creativity, and High Ability Center, also known as the Mach 3 Center, in the Whitlow R. Green College of Education at Prairie View A&M University. I'm excited to say that she's one of our professors in the PhD program there, and even more ecstatic to call her a mentor to me, as she is definitely one of my beacons and lights of hope while pursuing my PhD. Her research focuses on the experiences of faculty and administrators of color in higher education, African American females in leadership in higher ed, and access and inclusion of underserved populations in higher ed. Dr. Smith earned her doctorate in educational administration from the University of Texas at Austin. And then finally, Kat Okedeyi. She hails from, she's currently in Washington, D.C. in the DMV. I had the privilege of working with her at Prince George's Community College, where she teaches English and African American Lit and World Literature. She is the owner of Lil So Productions, LLC, where she creates meaningful Black content and experiences by producing high quality cultural events, digital media, and conversations on and around progressive Black culture and aesthetics. Let me tell you something about this woman here. She's a force. She has a podcast that she produces right now that I get up on the weekend mornings and watch. She's the director of the Book Bridge Project, encouraging young people to pick up books and crack them open and see the worlds inside. Her credits and credentials are endless, and I think what I'll do is get right to it. She's named as the 2019 through 2021 Cultural Caucus, a new creative incubator at the Kennedy Center, and again, just brilliant woman among a collective of brilliant people on this panel. And I'd like to say thank you all and welcome to the death of Cliff Huxtable as we talk about shaming.
Thanks for having me.
That was a mouthful. And we have Red Summer with us as well, staying on as we introduced her. And before we started her reading, Red teaches in the DMV area as well, and is an extraordinary spoken word artist as well as a cultural anthropologist. So, what we talk about, ladies?
All the good stuff.
Everything.
Everything, like how my grandmother used to say.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, how are you all feeling?
It's safe to say that I logged out of all my social medias today. Like I literally turned off Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of those things, because a well of anxiety started to well up in me, a sense of depression, because, and I was speaking with my mother about this a few days ago. Every morning I wake up and I have to say, I'm Black. Yay. Yay. And that was a tough conversation, or a tough understanding that I had within myself, is because I love my Black. I love my BLACK, just not in America right now.
I have not logged out of all my social media. I have actually, my screen time, because I get the little check through Apple or whatever, is actually up last week. But I have been trying to follow just what's going on as it updates. But I feel a lot like Ashlee. Every time I get a news update, Channel 13, CNN, whatever, it's almost like, what about this? What about that? And I think for me, the eye-opener about all of it, my son went to a friend's house for the weekend, well, for a night, and literally like maybe 7 minutes up the road. And I was like, okay, call me when you get there, text me when you get there. And so I'm kind of timing it. And I texted him, called him, no response, and kind of just went into a frenzy. He was like, Mom, I was still driving. I couldn't text or answer my phone. So I'm trying to balance out not suffocating him because of my fear. So that's kind of where I am with it.
That's real.
Wow.
That's real. We got to be worried of the young people.
Yeah. That's a powerful example.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I was doing okay, but now my heart is just heavy. It is just sunk. And I'm not sure how to pull it back, because so all of our allies are posting things and statements and whatnot. And I know that they are meant to be helpful, but in this moment, I can't even take that in. In this moment, I just need quiet in order to decide what is my next step and how do I, through action, move forward. And so I think so the stuff that the president does, he has been who he is. I think it's all the social media with like every educational organization putting out a statement. All my friends are blowing up my phone talking about, I hope your family's okay. And I appreciate that. So hopefully my friends aren't like, what? I appreciate that. But then that is also overwhelming in addition to the situation itself that's occurring. And then figuring out how I walk through this world within this situation.
Right.
You know, like you said, about do I go outside? I was thinking about that. I'm signed up to do the girl trek, like the 21-day walk with the little the audio about different Black female leaders. I was going to do that after this, but I was like, do you want to go outside? I mean, why should I have to think about it like that? Like, other than, do I want to get sweaty? Do I want to get hot? You know, not that, but like, do I physically want to step outside and worry about whether I'm going to come home?
Risk your life.
Yeah. And I don't think I've never thought about it in that way, but as these news pieces are folding on top of each other, that's the only conclusion that you can come to. Like, how do I maneuver through that? I guess is where I'm at right now.
Chad, you're in DC and what feels like an epicenter right now in terms of the hot emotional temperature of things. Tell us how you're faring.
So I'm right outside DC, so I can hear sirens. I've heard like canister. It's weird. I think for me, as an empath, the struggle is I myself am aware that we're in the middle of a pandemic. I am a teacher, so I'm trying to hold space for my students. I am sort of the mini matriarch of my family, so I'm holding space for my family, and I'm single. So there's this interesting thing where I'm not partnered. So I'm literally dealing with quarantining at home by myself. And there's a whole other thing that happens, I think, when there's nobody to remind you you haven't showered in 2 days. What are you doing? But what happens is, as an empath, you feel the weight of everybody else's energy, even if it's not your own. So there's a heaviness, and I've already lost one friend. I just found out somebody else died, and not being able to go and do the proper services, not being able to do the rituals, because I'm very much about rituals. That's been really heavy. I actually am fine with them burning it all down. I'm not even gonna lie. These systems have trapped Black people since the very beginning. I think that the anger that we're feeling was going to come. We have this very incompetent fool in the White House who is saying all sorts of things. He is basically signaling to white nationalists, or whatever you want to call them, these racists. I call them crackers because I'm from Florida. You know, the way that they're moving, he's emboldening them. And whether we like it or not, this is where we are with it. And so I feel the heaviness, and some days are harder than others. I think I hit my wall, like in terms of just the whole length of the fact that we've been sort of tucked away at home. I hit that wall this week, and it was hard because people are used to me being the one that they call. And I'm one of those people that doesn't call anybody. I just sit at home. And they start calling me like, where are you? Why haven't we seen you? And then it's like, I don't want to talk. And it just gets really tricky. And so turning off the social media, drinking a lot of water, trying to stay as juicy as possible, and trying not to eat all of the damn things in my house.
Good luck with that.
Man, it sucks right now. It's like 2:00 in the morning. Why are you eating those crackers? What's going on? Why are you doing this to yourself? And it's like, because I want these crackers. I don't need these crackers, but these crackers are keeping me company right now. Right. So just trying to manage all of that. So when we do get to the other side, I'm not looking at myself like, what happened? So it's been hard. It's hard for everyone, but we're going to be okay. We're going to make it through this.
The internet is an interesting thing. I think collectively, what I've heard, all of us say is that we've needed the time to turn this apparatus off, because we're getting everyone's emotions. It's interesting that Kat said that she's an empath. I think the internet can be two opposite things at the same time. It's like we're getting everyone's feelings and emotions, but no one's speaking with any element of tone with each other. So you may respond to someone's post and think in your mind, this is what I sound like when I respond in this way and we're aligned. And then the reaction is, why you say X, Y, and Z and why you feel this way? And it's like, it's a minefield. Like it's everything right now. Whether it's online or out into the world, you don't know who's wearing masks. You don't know who's positive or negative. You don't know. And everything's a minefield right now. Red, how are you feeling? I know we just finished hearing you read in the voice of Denise, and we're going to circle us back to Denise in just a second. But how are you doing?
I am actually having the opposite experience. Because last week was finals week for us, I was already disconnected. And so yesterday was the first day that I checked in to see what was happening. And like when we were going through rehearsal for this, like I sobbed through the entire thing. Like I couldn't stop because I didn't have the emotional buildup. I didn't have the information. So it was like in one day, I got all of the stories and all of the videos and all of the information. And I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I think I probably fell asleep at 9 o'clock this morning and woke up at noon. Yeah. Because my students need their finals, gotta put my grades in, right? And so trying to balance that weird thing of being pissed off and being a professional at the same time was a lot. Also, my mother's entire neighborhood was burned and looted last night in Chicago.
Sorry to hear that.
And so I was trying to negotiate with people to figure out getting food to my mother and where her new medicine pickup would be since the pharmacy had been looted, and trying to find resources for people. A young woman had offered to go to different stores to get baby supplies for women. And so in the midst of trying to help her find a grocery store that was open on the south side of Chicago, then I have to have a conference with a parent who's upset with their child's grade and stop and do that and come in and out of the emotion and try to I think I quit my job today, honestly.
Well, don't let them hear that. Don't let them.
No, they know. I emailed them today and I was just like, I'm not fighting with these people. I won't. Right. I'm juggling too many balls in the air right now. I cannot do parents. If I gotta go, I gotta go.
I purposely curated a panel here of all educators because you have the double duty of crafting and help curating character for with our students. But how do you balance that when you yourself want to be out there and in the mix of it? How do you balance what then could be used as a shaming device and saying you shouldn't be doing that? We talked a little bit about respectability politics, but I think this is something a little bit different. Go for it.
I was gonna say I was a shamer today on Facebook. Speaking of shaming, and I will just call it that, but it was a post, and I put it on my Instagram, put it on Facebook, and it said it was something to the effect of I won't let all of the racist white people make me forget the dope white people in my life. I love y'all. And so I saw that on a couple of people's feed on Instagram and Facebook, and I was livid. And I posted this and was like, why are people of color sharing this shit? Literally, that's what I put on there. It's bullshit. I don't recall, an angry white person ever posting, hey, Black people, I know, the president is saying this or that, but, y'all are not thugs. You know what I mean? I don't ever recall and basically it boiled down to language. Fuck a passive apology, right? Like we're past that. Like I'm not going to passively apologize. But speaking in terms of shaming, I mean, I guess I was a part of the club who shame, but I feel like I had to say that because I just felt like, why are we all, and it goes into that whole idea of white fragility. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's not piss off the white man. Hey, we still like y'all. No, it's not even about that. Because if you are my friend and you are white, you know what time it is. You know I'm up here talking crazy, saying stuff, but don't take it to the heart, right? But just to put this out there, it's like I said, it's like that delicate balance of having to, oh, hold on, y'all. Here come Massa. Let's, hush, hush, hush now. And that's how I felt. I couldn't put that out there into print, but saying it, that's kind of where I am. And then I thought about it because I have former students who follow me, when I taught secondary. And I was like, you know what? They're like 20 and 21 now. Fuck it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's going to be what it's going to be. And #, burn this bitch down. Like,
I mean, no, so I think this, I love you. I think when we realized that we weren't going back into school with the pandemic, one of the things that I had to tell my students over and over again is you are going to have to extend grace to all your professors. Yes, it is our job to hold space for you and help you transition, but we're human and everybody's got their shit with them. And so you can't complain about your professor not getting back to you because you literally are freaking out about a pandemic. They might be too. And I think at this point, we have to allow ourselves the grace of humanity because that's the thing that white supremacy tries to take away from us. So we can't do it to ourselves. So if you feel that way, you should totally say that. There's all of these statements, these company statements, people are like, oh, look at the cops kneeling and the white people apologizing for slavery. And I'm looking at my watch like, where the hell y'all been? Like,
where you been? Yeah.
Before Sesame Street's like, oh, we're all about, get the fuck out of here. I'm not, and so I look at it and I want to retweet and I want to say something. And then I was like, let me just delete this shit and get off into social media because it's just, it's insulting on so many levels.
I think about the fact that in the past, whenever we had, the murder of a young Black person, unarmed Black person, about a week later, there's some cop dancing in the street with the kids and, oh, I'm in the community, the latest dance, and I'm hip and I'm down with it. And I'm like, that isn't the answer. And that, and that's, and I know that people they're thinking they're doing the humane thing or expressing solidarity by kneeling and doing, but you should have been doing that when Colin was doing it. You should have been doing that when, people were losing their jobs or losing their lives in real time. And now that, you see maybe the blinders are off and you feel compelled to kneel, that's good and well for you, but I'm not giving you a cookie for something you should have been doing anyway.
Right.
Ashlee, go for it. You were about to chime in and then Stella hop in there. Okay.
Y'all both were preaching, by the way. But can we talk about the emotional detachment that comes with like the emotional healing? So with every incident that you see on television, another Black boy has been shot in the street. Okay, I got to go back and internalize. I'm internalizing, but I got to heal, but I don't have time to heal. So I'm watching over and over and over again to where it's desensitized. So now it's how do you get out of that numbing effect? Does that make sense? Yeah. Like how do you get out of that? Okay, well, looks like there's another Black boy shot. All right, now, no, that's not the right thing. But at the same time, you see everyone burning everything down, looting. By the way, please do not burn up my car. But please skip over my car. Thank you, Jesus. But what else? I guess my question is, what is the answer then? Because we've tried the peaceful Martin Luther King, we tried the peaceful effect. Now we're switching on to Malcolm X just a little bit. But so what's the answer?
So I would say it's a both and. But I'm going to go back to what I was going to, the shaming piece, and then TDV will take us where we need to go in terms of the conversation.
Sure.
But I think the part that that I want to add to this is the shaming within our own communities. Mm-hmm. So the shaming related to how people engage in helping the struggle. So when we connected to our conversation last week, there's really a lot of interest around protest. And of course, there's a lot of protests going on right now. And I guess my part is that each person should use their gifts to support. And each part that we do to support is important. So I think about those individuals that might be within systems that are working within systems for change. And you need both of those things. You need that person that's there at the exact moment that they can figure out how to get a policy in that can begin a snowball of change. Right. That person is valuable, and that person is part of the struggle. Right. And I think that many times those that consider themselves activists forget that group of people and shame that group of people as not being part of the struggle without understanding the strength and resilience it takes to be in that room and wait and listen to them talk about us and have to work through that and get dressed and go to that job and do whatever. Like that is the easiest thing in the world for them to do. Right. And for some of them, maybe it is. But I think that there needs to be an acknowledgement of that portion of us that are all about it, but we're doing it about it in the way in which we best think we can advance the struggle. Right. It doesn't help me to go to jail. Right. If I can go into a classroom and try to inform and teach students about how we can all use our gifts to help the struggle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if my gift is something different, if your gift is the gift of creating social change, if your gift is the gift of pulling together coalition and getting people out there, use your gift. I'm supportive of that and proud of you for that. But what I'm asking for is for you to also recognize and be proud of the gifts that some of us that aren't out there are doing in order to advance. And that's where I see a lot of shaming, even within social media, Slacktivists. There's all sorts of ways that people talk about those of us that might be that aren't going to go out and picket, but we are going to register a bunch of people to vote. Right. We are going to be the ones that are trying to taking people to the voter booth. We are going to be the ones that write the op-ed pieces. We're going to be the ones that write the books. Right. We're going to be the ones that teach the classes. There's all sorts of ways to support. And I just want to make a clarion call for the movement to understand and to embrace that group of us.
Yeah. Right. Here's my question, Dr. Smith, and maybe you can come back with a response then is, I think since the Black Arts Movement, I feel like that has been the mode of combat, using the arts, using the spoken word, using poetry, using media, using theater, using film, using entrepreneurship, using hip hop, using fashion, using things that are easily and very quickly appropriated for financial gains elsewhere. I mean, looting and rioting was a problem until white folk got out there, and all of a sudden it was like, we're doing this on your behalf, and why are you coming up in my face? So is there a new tactic then for the new age? Should there be a new tactic for the new age?
What do you mean in terms of like rioting, responding? What do you mean?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, a new tactic. So I don't really, this is going to sound really weird, but I don't know what else is left to do. You know what I'm saying? And I say that in terms of going back to Kat, right? She's an empath. And I think to an extent, because we're all educators, we are all empaths. You know what I mean? Different levels, obviously, at the very core of it all, we are. Right. And so I think that we all are working in that gift in terms of, is there like a new, movement or whatever? We're all Black women. So, I mean, that in of itself, lets young women see, okay, well, oh wow, you up here, you do this, and okay, you got something to say. And even, you know, the young men respond differently to Black female teachers. So I mean, we are out here changing the narrative. But I don't know what else is left for us to do. Looting obviously is not okay, because that ain't got nothing to do with nothing. And we talked about this yesterday, but personally, if you are a business owner, especially if you are like a Target, a CVS, a Walgreens, a Walmart, you got corporate insurance. I don't recall. You'll be okay. I mean, I'm not endorsing looting, but I'm saying that is the least of the problem, right?
Sure.
But I don't know what else to do, because I mean, even in certain places, people have, because Ashlee and I are friends. We went to undergrad and grad school together, and we've been in certain situations. People have looked at us because I'm not her complexion, or she is her complexion. So it's like, well, y'all don't know nothing, and what you know about the white girl. And I'm like, oh, so I'm really okay. Well, there's that, and it just kind of makes you just like, yeah, I don't even, like, you know what, y'all got it. Y'all get out there, y'all get shot, rubber bullets, y'all handle it, and then we want somebody to write about it or bail your ass out. Call me.
Right. I'm gonna let Red go first because I know she wanted to say something, and then I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about how I had to give myself grace in this moment. I did my first riot when Rodney King was going on. Like, I, you know, did a march when David Duke was trying to run for governor of my state at the time. Like, I've been out there in the streets and protesting and doing things for a long time. And I, you know, up to Troy Davis and Sandra Bland and Trayvon and all of those. And I felt like this time, like, I was willing to gift myself the grace of not needing to do that again. There was definitely an experience, and I think it was really when Troy Davis was assassinated by the state that I was like, okay, I don't want to keep trying this. Something else has to be the way that I show up in this space. And so it was like last night checking on the two students in Atlanta, making sure that they had what they needed to be released, and that they had what they needed to get their car fixed, because the police officers bust out their windows and flatten their tires. And I know when I was in college, I couldn't pay for tires. So just making sure, like, okay, well, who do we send this to? Like, how do we make sure that those children are okay? You know, and somebody made a call to the dean at Spelman, and somebody else made, and so making sure that those connections were made. Like, those are things that we can do, right? And those are ways that we can impact the children. There were young people in Chicago who one boy had been missing, or young man. The last time that they saw him, the police had him in a chokehold, and then nobody could find him, right? So just making sure that we're constantly, you know, putting that out and letting people know he is missing. We can't find him. Oh, magically they found him. All right. Right. So those kind of things, like, it seems like it doesn't matter, or that it's not an actual contribution. But I promise you, if nobody was looking for him, no one would find him.
So it seems like the new tactic is really leveraging the fact that we can communicate now instantaneously, you know, so that we can do some of these things quickly and make difference like that. I think the other piece is about the political piece. Like, we have to vote. We have to make sure that we believe that it's important to vote.
Right.
You know, we have to be able to tell the story of why every vote matters. I know that's so cliche. It sounds cliche. I'm looking at myself. I'm like, oh, you're so cliche. But it's true. And I think that, I mean, even for the older generation, like, I always ask my mom, are you going to go vote? She's like, oh, voting doesn't matter. Well, no, we still go vote. But if it was left to her and me not taking her to the polls, then she wouldn't vote. You know, so particularly in these times when we have this fool in office that is just taking us to a militarized state, we have got to vote. This is, I mean, I feel like this is the beginning of kind of like a Nazi Germany or something, just something crazy. Like, we really need to step into this space and use the political and our information along with other gifts to kind of make a difference.
Yeah.
So I think what you just said is, I echo that. I think that there's a couple things that we have to consider. One, people get upset at the looting and the rioting, but I'm of the Frantz Fanon school where however the country got started, that's how you have to dismantle it. So if you snatch a bunch of Africans off the coast of the Atlantic, force them into this space and dehumanize them for 400 and some odd years, the only way that this country is going to understand change is if you use similar tactics to get them off your neck. And it's hard. People don't want to hear that, but there's a reason why I have never seen, and I'm of the age where I remember Rodney King. I've never seen this much corporate statement-ish things flying out. I've never seen this many corporate statements come out. Like, all of a sudden, people are less afraid to be associated with Blackness. They they still won't take that hard stance against police brutality, but they're all of a sudden they're using the word Black as opposed to people of color. Right. They're actually using it capital B. I'm like, oh, okay, something is happening here. But that's only because there is so much rage. And that rage is not just Black people, because the other thing of this is that I teach my students, like, I will not be shamed. I'm not going down there. I have 10 nephews and nieces. I am not going to be, no, I am a citizen of this country. You will not tear gas me. Fuck that. I'm not putting my hands up. I'm not screaming about I can't breathe. Fuck that. I'm not doing it. But what I will do is when I'm in my classrooms and I'm teaching African-American literature or whatever topics I'm teaching, I let my white students know your job is to go back to your racist cousins and your flippant friends, and you tell them everything that I've taught you. You take that information and you go back and you school them, because none of your Black colleagues, that's not their job.
Right.
And so I think that's part of where we change things. The other piece of this is that capitalism is inherently anti-Black. So when you are operating in a capitalist state, when you are more concerned about products and Gucci and this and Target and buildings, as opposed to the fact that a man was killed on TV with a white man knee on his neck and his hands in his pocket, then we have a problem. And when you understand that that same body that was under that knee at some point was sold on a block, you can see why. I had to explain to a friend of mine. He's Irish and he lives in the UK. And he's like, he really looks like, I don't understand how is it possible that these cops haven't been charged? I was like, America. He's like, I don't understand. I was like, racism. So I had to go through and explain how poor whites and white nationalism and identity are a way for rich whites to convince them to be looking over at us as opposed to the people that are actually making your life miserable. And how when all you have is your white identity, you have been told most of your life, at least you are not a nigger. Correct. That's what they told you. That's and all these niggers are making money. They're smarter than you. They got bigger houses than you. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I don't understand. I thought I wasn't supposed to want to be them. But here they are, like running the culture. They're everywhere. So what do? You go to Tulsa and you destroy it. You burn it down because your whole identity is based on this idea that you're supposed to be okay, not wanting to be us. So the systems have to be dismantled. I think the ability for us to immediately get money to kids in jail, get money to people who need bail and lawyers. Like, I think that's one of the ways that things are different.
Sure.
Before social media, before Cash App and all these other things, if somebody's in jail, you'd have to write a check, mail a check, cash a check, all these things. Now, if I want to help somebody, I can literally in 2 seconds support them. And so I do think that there are things that are changing.
The construct,
the construct is changing. But white people got to be part of that construct because it's not our job,
right?
To do all of this heavy lifting. And as far as the voting piece is concerned, we have got to, as Black people, understand. I'm not in presidential whatever. Be damned. If your mayor doesn't like you, if the chief is racist, you got a bigger problem than who's the vice president. So we do have to start making people understand that the politics are local. Do not listen to Diddy. Take your ass out there and vote. And not just in these presidential elections, but in these local and midterm elections, because those are the people that we have to hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah, the local needle is what really definitely needs to be moved a lot more. I mean, we vote for the leadership of our law enforcement.
Right.
I mean, your local sheriff is elected. Your police chief is elected. So yeah, definitely on the local level, you have to see that's where your immediate power reside. And we're sitting kind of like in this middle space between looking at what the elders did when they marched and they sang, and Negro spirituals kept them company while they were arrested en masse, and while dogs nipped at their heels and tore at their clothes and bit at their flesh, and water hoses impaled their skin. And we're seeing young people who are, swallowing the burn of tear gas and pepper spray and experiencing the lash of rubber bullets. And we're seeing a repetition of tactics from the other side, despite our young people and our elders having different ways of, fighting the good fight, if you will. Some of these tactics are on their way back around. I mean, to think of, the National Guard or the military coming into spaces and turning on water hoses and I heard this today, bring the dogs. I mean, that was literally
eerily reminiscent.
Yeah. So how do we, and some of the people who are watching on the various platforms, I'm sorry, I'm chuckling at this guy, Nathan Brinson. I'm not he's on one right now. I'm gonna talk directly to him in just a moment, because I'm not shaming anyone. I'm not shaming this brother either, but we're gonna talk to him a little bit. But we want you all to communicate, how can we all be a conduit of the same tactics and the same solution despite generational gaps. So let's talk about some of the generational divides and how we can meet some of our elders and our young people where they are, so that we're not shaming anyone from either side for doing things the way they've done it or doing things the way they're doing it.
Does it take because I think about, because I'm a millennial, I think I'm like 26. And I think about the relationship that my mother and my grandmother had, or the relationship that I have with them two. And that dynamic was a sense of I'm telling you what to do and there is no talk back.
Right.
You're going to take this and do as I say. Or if something goes wrong, as a parent, I'm not going to apologize for that. So when you're living in a Black family or have a dynamic such as that, how do you gauge the gap between generations? If you have a generation, I'm assuming my grandmother's in the baby boomer era where she experienced racism. My grandmother doesn't talk about it because it scarred her so much that she just doesn't talk, because she doesn't want me to go through it. But here we are again. Right. But I think it takes that, okay, as a parent, I need to be able to love my child and view them not as a servant, but as my child, to love them and love myself first before I even start loving my kids. Because a lot of children are scarred. When I talk to my students, that when I ask them, hey, when we're just casually talking, the dynamics with their parents or with their mothers, fathers, they don't have one. And they don't have one, and they have significant others, such as their great grandmother raising them, or auntie down the street who's been raising them. Yeah. How do you compensate for those missing pieces?
Yeah, to me, I think it's not. I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, and I think for me, the other question would be not even that, but you have people who, because of trauma and because of the emotional effects of shaming that they've experienced or that they've, seen other people experience, that kind of deters them from wanting to do anything at all. So, grandma and, Big Annie or whatever, may not want to take young, what is it, Generation Z, is that right? Yeah. Okay. And I want to take great nephew or grandson out to protest, or to, not even protest, but I mean, maybe, if you want to wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, or something, those people in that age group may not feel comfortable with that person whom they are, charged to protect, wearing that, because during a certain time period, marking yourself as such, you pretty much were asking for a death sentence. You know what I mean? So I agree with Ashlee, definitely what she's saying. Within the question to me is exactly that. Like, how do you even begin to have a conversation where you can try to convince? Because my grandmother was set in her ways. When she said it wasn't gonna be nothing else. Why are you still talking?
Right.
We done. So how do you even have a conversation with those groups of people? Even my mother, just to be able to say, this is okay now, even though it looks like, because it still looks like it did back in the 60s, but it's not, because it does. So, how do you say, this is not like it was back then, but it is. So how do you even have that kind of conversation and convince them that it's safe to do anything different than do nothing?
Right.
Yeah.
Because the way millennials are raising their Generation Zs, I think about my mother, and none of that would be happening.
So I think part of the thing we have to be careful of is we don't want to over romanticize the past in that way. When you look at the beginnings of the civil rights movement, there were a lot of people who were like, we're not marching. A lot of kids weren't allowed to leave their houses. A lot of parents were like, I don't give a damn. We are not you cannot go out there. It took those kids defying their parents and saying, you know what, this is too important. Yeah. Like we have to get our rights. We have to be able to exercise our rights. I think there's also it's a different age. I think about my dad who just turned 75, and I know, being an Afro-Am major, I'm Nigerian, and maybe they figured it out by the name. And so, but I'm Nigerian American. So I play this bridge role. And I remember the first time I read Souls of Black Folk by W. Du Bois. And I thought, oh my God, this man has just captured my entire life. And not having access to language was the thing that actually helped me bridge the gap with my dad, to get him to understand that, when a white person calls a Black person nigger and you're standing next to him, your Africanness does not, they're talking to you too. Like, you have to understand that you're not separated from that. And so what I have found is that when we start, the more language we have, that's how we change things. There are a lot of grandmothers and grandfathers who experience serious trauma. When that grandmother says, no, this is what it is, that's PTSD.
Yeah.
Right now, a lot of us are experiencing this. We are living in this continual cycle of the present, because we can't plan anything. We can't futurize. We don't know. Yeah. And that is creating PTSD in all of us. And so the fact that we have that language, I think, really helps us start to reshape how people are looking at things. Because before, it was, no, we're not doing this. Don't ask me why, because I said so. And that was it. But when you can now understand that your grandmother, what she was experiencing was probably depression, was probably anxiety, it helps you put things in a framework that I think helps to be able to tell your mom or your dad or your brother, your cousin, okay, this is what's happening. So I have 10 nephews and nieces. I'm a professional auntie, and I'm one of the cool ones. And so I take them to museums. I took some of the older ones when Trayvon Martin was killed. I was like, you're going to go down and see what a protest looks like. And I taught them, you need to pay attention. You need to know when it's time to leave, because you get caught up and then you get run over. So you got to pay attention. So even thinking in the way that these protests are happening now, part of the problem is that generation that was like, you know what, we're battle fatigued, we're done, because they didn't pass on the tactics. A lot of folks don't know how to protest in a way that's safe.
Correct.
There are ways that you can protest that you can get in and out of situations really quickly. But if there's no one to teach you how to look for an undercover, how to tell when they're about to start that tear gas, how to dress so that like, people are passing out memes. This is how you dress for a protest. People out here in tank tops and open toe shoes, and I'm like, wait a minute,
definitely not open toed shoes.
Open shoulders out, the whole nine, and I'm like, come on now.
Kat, we have a question. Let me ask you. Speaking of that, about the open toe shoes, what do you think about televising and posting locations of demonstrations and protests? I know, we live in a world of oversharing, essentially. And so I've seen Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, meet up at McKinney at Discovery Green here in Houston. We marching from here to Pablo Street, whatever. What do you think about that? that.
Here's the thing, and this is honestly, while I love the energy of protests, I've always been like, when you have to get a permit to protest, that's not a protest.
Yeah, that's not. That's
Right.
right.
That's not a protest.
Right.
When you have to get a permit to walk from, one side of the street to the other to lawfully protest, when it has to be lawful, then I don't know that it's effective. The other thing is, we live in these systems. Like, one of the things that is really that I've been struggling with as I watch these images, if you pay attention, oftentimes people have their phones out the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, are you documenting this for like, why aren't you focused on the protest?
Yeah.
There are these staged pictures, people standing in front of cops, taking pictures and selfies, and it's like, okay, the social media piece is getting in the way. So I mean, there's nothing you can do. Like, people track your cell phones. That's if you really want to, if you really want to pop off, you have to be willing to figure out an analog way, because they're gonna find out unless you use WhatsApp. If nothing else, Hong Kong has taught us how to do it. But they have mastered that whole idea of protest. There's something energetic and exciting about being part of the melee, and that's not ever going to change.
Yeah.
The question is, how effective can you be? Because if you pay attention, everybody's using that Black Lives Matter hashtag. Black Lives Matter as an organization is not a cohesive organization. No. It's a hashtag. So you don't know who's in charge. The protest that happened in DC, the DC chapter was like, we didn't even know this was happening. We didn't sign off on this. But Black Lives Matter was on it, so people assumed that they were in charge.
That's interesting because in Houston, if you go to the Black Lives Matter website, their official website,
right,
there is no chapter in Texas. Yet the Black Lives Matter BLM HOU was hosting or sponsoring the last they had out here.
Right.
And so my girlfriend was like, "Hey, are you going?" I was like, "Girl, there is no Black Lives Matter in Texas." She's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "On the website, it doesn't have a chapter anywhere in Texas." So it makes me really start to question and wonder, who are you? Like, who do you work for? Who sent you? What are you doing? So I didn't go. I just told her if I were her, I was like, I would really be careful about that. Like, that looks really shady. But I mean,
this is just posted, and it's true. There is no hierarchy. The question for me then, though, is who speaks then? Like, how do we decide? And so there's beauty in just people showing up and being, experiencing solidarity together. But we are living in a police state, whether we like it or not.
Sure.
So there has to be
military state.
Right.
And that's part of why Black Lives was organized like it is.
Right.
That's kind of their claim to fame, that there is no leader.
Right.
That it was organized in that way in order to purposefully. It's not that they just don't have one. So I think they figured out how that works, but
it's funny because Red and I had a conversation about this very thing. I don't know if Red remembers this, but we were sitting in Atlanta and talking about how there isn't a particular go-to. Like, who do you call? Like, what's it was at UVA when we were the Martise Johnson outrage, when the UVA student was beaten by the cops there, and we were both on campus there, and a young person said, well, the issue with Black Lives Matter, along with Occupy Wall Street, when they were a thing, was there was no go-to in terms of leadership. And there was no person to speak on behalf of the organization in terms of a list of demands.
Right.
So there was no cohesive, this is why we're angry, but this is what's going to help us move forward. Here's our list of demands, and here's the body or the person or the couple of people who are the most articulate or the chosen few to speak on our behalf to get a thing done. Right. I think there's a difference between having a leader and having someone who can amplify the voice of Black Lives Matter. And I think both of those things, they're not necessarily one and the same. And I think by not having a spokesperson or a collective to go to and say, these people speak on behalf of us. We know in all these various outposts what the list of demands are. Here's a cohesive list. We're going to the Capitol and say to our representatives and our senators and whomever else, say to the Supreme Court, say to the president, this is our list of demands. And I think right now we're in our form of protest is about being the loudest and the biggest in terms of the demonstration of it all. But what are our list of demands?
Yeah.
When everything is still burning and smoldering and the fires have been put out, then what?
So what's interesting about what you just said is that, true, there is no hierarchy. I know that part of the design was for it to be sort of the people's thing. I don't know. There's something, for us, those Gen Xers, we were taught spokesperson, go to Jesse Jackson, go to Al Sharpton, da-da-da-da. So we are, in our mind, it's a very linear thing. There's always a spokesperson.
Yeah.
But I actually am not going to lie. There are moments like that young sister, I can't remember what city she was in, but she spoke so eloquently. She's like, the looting and the burning, we learned that from you. So one of the things that I think is fascinating about BLM is that it really allows women, Black women, young Black women to speak. The problem is, as a society, we don't amplify or elevate Black women.
Right.
So you have some of the most articulate moments that I've seen throughout this whole thing have been from Black women.
Right.
Who are like off the cuff, off the dome, saying just speaking this truth that you can't even argue with. Like, and in that space, it's like, these are our list of demands. Stop killing us. Give us equal access to healthcare.
Yeah.
Stop policing us like animals. Like, it's very clear. But what happens is CNN will be out there and they'll find the random white guy and be like, so what are your take on it? Or they'll find the Black dude, but they won't amplify these very clear, articulate voices by Black women.
Yeah.
I just wanted to just kind of add to this part of the conversation that one thing that we forget is that the movement was not one thing.
Right.
Right. When we look at the civil rights era and we look at what was happening at that time, there were multiple cogs that were moving, that were making things happen. There were multiple organizations that were moving, that were making things happen. There were multiple groups of people in multiple cities that were mobilizing in order to make this happen on a national scale. And because we forget that the organizing of the few in the community or in the city or the town or, wherever is what ends up trickling out, right? So there's a situation that's happening in Mobile. Yeah. The people are already there. They're on the ground. They're mobilizing. They invite Dr. King to come speak at their event. Dr. King wasn't creating events around the country.
Right.
The people were creating events that he could come to and be a voice for or a voice at, right? But there were so many other people who were organizing and doing that work in smaller ways. We want the national leader with the halo to come and save us, but there is no Dr. King without CT Vivian, right? Without like the women who have this local organization and they're tired of the button workers, right? The house cleaners, right? All of those smaller unions, they were the ones who made sure that the national organizers who were there knew what was happening to the people.
The 2,000 that walked for 365 days. Who look like all of our mamas and grannies. I'm gonna put a pin in it right there. I'm gonna stop right there for just a second. I am gonna ask our closing question in just a second, but I want to do a screen share real quick of a young man who has borrowed the echoes of the past and the lament of days ago, but also being a young man who is our absolute and definite future. Kedron Bryant has done a thing, and I'm going to take a moment to screen share his lament. Give me one moment. I'm a young Black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've got enough struggle. I just want to live. God protect me. I just want to live. I'm gonna play it again for the people in the back because I don't think they heard it. I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stay. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hung to this prey. My people don't want no trouble. We got enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live. We're gonna come back to Denise and the gang. We have a couple
left Denise out in the cold. Okay.
One of our guests here who in Grady, who's already answered this question, and so we're gonna post the question up on the board again and ask you, who's your favorite Huxtable, and which Huxtable are you most like? We're gonna start with Dr. Smith. Go on, Stella. Tell us, who's your favorite Huxtable?
So I thought about this, and I didn't want to cheat and go and watch a couple of episodes because that would be who is my favorite Huxtable now versus who was my favorite Huxtable. And my memories of watching the Huxtables, what I loved wasn't a specific character. It was the family unit. It was the feeling around what each one of the episodes, what that family experienced and worked through together. So I really can't say that I had a favorite one. The one that I can hands down without question say that I am most like was Vanessa. But in terms of picking a character, I lived vicariously through all of them in different spaces based on characters. And it was really about, wow, this is a family unit that through all challenges had worked together. And in my mind as a child, it was a loving kind of unit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Excellent. Ashlee.
This is going to sound real cliche, but honestly, it was Rudy because I was like her age or younger when I was watching the Cosby Show. And Dr. Huxtable was the man that I never had. My father passed away from cancer when I was 7. So having that type of dynamic and seeing that through television, it made me want to watch it more and more because I wanted to know, so is this what it's like to have a Black father in a Black household? I wonder. But then when I go to school and listen to, my friends, dads or whatever, it's almost parallel. So yeah.
Kat, tell us who your choices are.
Denise. I was an African kid growing up. I was born in DC, but I grew up in Florida. I listened to UK Britpop. Wham was one of my favorite bands. Like Vanessa dressed the way I dressed. She talked the way I talked. And what was cool was that on the show, she was never accused of being white. So there was something for me to see her show up the way she did. And my parents hated the way I dressed because they were like, you're dressing like an artist. What is this nonsense? So as African parents, the worst thing you could be is an artist. So there were concerns. But she was, I loved it. I loved her. I just loved her style. And I loved how free she was. And I loved that she was never accused of not being Black. So it was a big deal for me to see her.
Wow. Red Summer.
The first one that popped into my head, of course, I was not in her age range, but I just wanted to be Claire. Like I wanted to grow up and be like that kind of woman in the space and that kind of mother to my children. But the emotional one, and that's why I kind of battled for me, who I identify with, was Cousin Pam.
Oh wow.
Girl, Cousin Pam.
Right.
Eric Alexander, if you're watching,
yeah,
love your moment. Yeah.
My family was definitely like upper middle class in St. Louis, and my mom left and went to Chicago, and I was raised away from the family in Chicago. And when I would come around, I was kind of welcome, but in the way, right? Everything had to kind of adjust to accommodate me. Sure. And I recognized Pam when she came into the house. Like I saw her like, that's every summer I got to go down to see the family.
Yeah. Wow. Ladies, thank you so much for sharing not only your stories and yourself, but also sharing your activisms, sharing your care of us, of Black people, Black women, humans on planet Earth.
You're very welcome.
I am going to ask you to come back on Thursday. On Thursday, we have chapter 3 of the book, Rudy. We're going to listen to the young baby, who's now a grown woman and has followed in her mother's footsteps as a lawyer. She's a social justice maverick, and she is she's what we probably envisioned Claire having been when she was younger. So on Thursday, we're going to listen to the cast of chapter 3, Rudy. Our panel after the reading addresses burning down our idols, what it means to have role models and then have those role models disappoint us or have a need to find new idols or role models to emulate, or how to become our own version of an example. We will be back on Thursday. And it's hard to know what the world will look like between now and Thursday. So what I charge you all to do is be safe. If you are out protesting, demonstrating, advocating for all of our lives on all of our behalves, please be safe. Know that you do it with all of our blessing and all of our support and all of our love, but also please be safe, because your best interest is not at hand and at heart by a lot of the people that are out there right now. So know that we appreciate you and we love you, and thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you guys on Thursday. All right, bye-bye.